Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming to this annual review meeting for Chris today. I'm Miss Mullen, Chris's school counselor. Today we will hear from some of Chris's teachers to see how he has been doing in class, hear from Chris to talk about his future goals, and also make a plan for his junior year. Everyone here is aware that Chris is eligible for special education under the hearing impairment classification, but more specifically, Chris has a auditory processing disorder. And just some things to think about. Students with auditory processing disorders typically, their typical needs are difficulty understanding complex information, more specifically multi-step directions, poor listening skills, and some language difficulties. So let's all keep that in mind as we move forward here today. Before we begin, how about everybody goes around and introduces themselves? Chris, why don't you start?
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm 16 years old and I'm a sophomore in high school.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Kane and I'm Chris's mom.
Hi, I'm Mr. Jones. I'm Chris's general education English teacher.
I'm Miss Allen, and I'm Chris's special education geometry teacher.
Awesome. Thanks so much again for being here today and for working together with us to help set Chris up for success. To start, Chris is going to share a little bit more about himself with a one-pager document that he prepared for this meeting.
My strengths are asking questions. My interests are football, drawing, and music.
You like music?
Yeah,
What's your favorite band?
Led Zeppelin.
Cool.
My preferences in class are sitting close to the teacher and having a buddy to ask questions to. And my needs are written directions and repetition really helps me.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris. It's really important to be self-aware about your strengths and weaknesses and to learn how to advocate for yourself and your needs as you get older. I know that you said that you like to have a buddy in class where you can ask questions if you're confused, so we can definitely talk to your teachers and make sure that happens in the future. So now let's hear from your teachers, and they're going to let us know how Christopher has done so far in their classes this year. Mr. Jones and then Mrs. Allen, can you please share the PLAF statements that you composed for next year's IEP, please?
Sure. Chris is a positive student who comes to class on time. He always works hard and does his homework. He struggles with following verbal multiple step directions and has difficulty with new vocabulary that he's unfamiliar with. Chris always asks questions if he needs clarification.
I agree with what Mr. Jones has said. Chris definitely succeeds when I write the directions down for him and chunk them into digestible bites. He also does well when we break into small groups and work on problems together. Overall, he's been a great addition to our class this year.
Great. That is some really positive feedback from your teachers. That's awesome, Chris. With an auditory processing disorder, it does make sense that you have some difficulty following oral directions, so do not be discouraged. It seems you have adapted well and kind of overcome this difficulty. So now we're going to talk about next year. I can't believe that you're going to be a junior already. It's crazy. This year, your classes were all in-class resource settings, which means that you had one general education teacher, like Mr. Jones, and one special education teacher in the room, like Miss Allen. It seems like you did really well with that, and 2 teachers was very beneficial to you. So I think next year we can go ahead and stay with that same placement. Mrs. Kane and Chris, are you still comfortable with that placement for next year?
Yes, I'm very pleased with his efforts and grades this year. I think in-class resource is a great placement for him.
I also really liked having 2 teachers to ask for help. I'd like that again next year.
Okay, great. So we will definitely keep that the same for next year. So your 4 core classes, that social studies, science, math, and English, you'll have 2 teachers in the room. The next thing that we'll talk about is the modifications and accommodations that you have. This year in your IEP, the accommodations and modifications that you were entitled to were as follows. You were given extra time for task completion if needed. Teachers were to frequently check for understanding. They were to provide oral as well as written directions. repeat, reword, and clarify anything as needed, pre-teach new vocabulary, and also allow spelling corrections on writing assignments. Chris, did you feel like you used these accommodations and modifications adequately this year?
Yeah, they helped me a lot.
Chris did a great job of advocating for himself when he needed a modification.
That's great to hear, especially as you get older. It's really important to learn to self-advocate. So it's awesome that you asked questions and, spoke out when you needed a modification. Mrs. Kane, can you think of anything that we didn't say that you'd like to be added to the modifications that you think would benefit Chris for next year?
No, I think these are very appropriate and helpful for now.
Wonderful. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is some other services that you are entitled to. Chris, first, you have been receiving speech therapy in a group for the first time this year. How has that been going? Would you like to keep that the same for next year?
Yes, I liked it better than going by myself.
Okay, so we are going to keep that the same for next year. You'll still get group speech once a month for about 30 minutes each session for next year. And you've also been going to counseling with a peer group this year to learn some social skills. I personally have seen a lot of growth with this because I'm the one that led these counseling groups, and I feel like you are starting to come out of your shell and meet new people. So I am going to recommend to keep that the same for next year as well, as long as that is okay with you and your mom.
Sounds good to me.
Me too.
Perfect. Okay, so for next year, we are going to make your counseling goal to identify and respond appropriately to verbal and nonverbal cues for things such as annoyance or irritation or sarcasm. This is something that we've worked on in counseling already this year with your group, but we will continue it again next year because it's important as we get older to learn how to read other people, especially with verbal and nonverbal cues. So does that sound good to you?
Sure.
Okay. All right, and then finally, we're going to talk about transitioning today. So the transition, once you turn 16 in your IEP, you start with a transition plan because eventually you're going to leave high school and we need something set in place to ensure that you will succeed after high school. I know that we've talked about this previously and you expressed some interest in joining the military once you graduate, and you also have been enrolled in the junior ROTC class this year. Is this something that you're still interested in?
Yes, but I'm not sure what branch, and I am really nervous about taking the ASVAB test that you are required to take to get placed in a good job.
That's very honorable of you. Thank you for thinking about joining. And just so you know, that test is called the ASVAB. So for future reference, that's called the ASVAB. And actually, you're in luck because our school does provide an after-school tutoring program. It's kind of like, instead of an SAT prep course, it's a ASVAB prep course to help you prepare for that test because we do have a high military population here in town. And a lot of students struggle with the ASVAB and the science and the math questions on there. So we like to prep students. So because of that, we will get you enrolled in that. And our transition goal for next year will be for you to be enrolled in that ASVAB test prep course. It's once a week after school, starting in October, and then the test is in April. So you have from October to April to prep for that. And then another transition goal that we're going to put in place for you is just for you to start researching more about the different military branches. So that you might figure out what might be the best fit. And then we always have recruiters come in so you can kind of lean more towards one branch or the other as you do more research. There's tons of pamphlets and stuff down in my office, so you can always come down and we can look into that together. How do those transition goals sound to you, Mrs. Kane?
Wonderful.
Sounds good.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, that pretty much wraps it up for this annual review meeting. Does anyone have anything else they want to add or any questions?
No.
No, thank you.
Chris? Great, okay, well, Mrs. Kane, I will print this updated copy of the IEP. I'll send it home to your home address. Look over it, take your time, okay? If there's anything that you think of when you get home, feel free to give me a call and we can update it But if everything looks okay, you can sign off and send it back to me, and then this IEP will be put into place for next year. Chris, don't forget, I am always here for whatever you need. You know where my office is. Don't be a stranger. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.